"You're just a backup plan." Dad toasted on my birthday and opened a credit line without my knowledge. So, I filed a fraud case and left him struggling. If I had to pinpoint the precise moment I understood I wasn't truly a member of my family, but rather a tool, a background fixture, something helpful but ultimately disposable, it would be the night of my 28th birthday. The night my father lifted a glass, laughed in my face and said, "You're not family, Ethan. You're just our safety net." The worst thing was that everyone else laughed with him. But let me back up a bit since the narrative does not begin there. Not really. My name is Ethan, and I am 28 years old. I've always been the quiet one in the family, the dependable one who didn't make a fuss, paid his bills on time, fixed the broken faucet, helped move furniture, and earned decent grades without being asked. I am not theatrical, I do not yell or bang doors. But I notice everything, every slight, every casual remark, every eye roll, each muttered remark behind my back, and I have been observing them since I was a youngster. I grew up in a suburban 3-bedroom house with my mother, father, and younger brother Liam. Liam is the golden child. He was the loudest, funniest, and most irresponsible person. He may crash the family car and then spin the narrative such that I offered to help pay for the repairs. He was jailed at 17 for stealing, and my parents pulled every string they could to make it go away, then scolded at me for not picking him up quickly enough. My parents, Rachel and John, were a peculiar but superficially typical couple. Dad worked in insurance. Mom remained home. They were the type of individuals that gave to the church and enjoyed discussing traditional family values. But behind closed doors, they were always a little too preoccupied with appearances, not true well-being, but simply how things seemed. They didn't mind if Liam blew through their savings as long as he appeared to have promise. But I was a different type of asset. A quiet, industrious backup plan. I started working when I was 18. First at a grocery shop, then part-time IT jobs, before transitioning into data analytics and landing a respectable career with reasonable income. I've never asked my folks for anything. Not during college. Not when I returned home momentarily after college to save money for a car. Not when my manager cheated me out of a promotion and I spent 3 weeks on rice and eggs. Despite the fact that I was paying rent, they continued to treat me as if I owed them something, as if I should be happy simply to be under their roof. When Liam came back home after losing yet another job, guess who had to relocate to the smaller room so he could start over? When my mother decided to renovate the kitchen, guess whose rent payments were suddenly applied to new countertops rather than groceries? Still, I stayed, largely out of habit and partly out of shame. Perhaps I was waiting for anything to change, for someone to recognize how much I was doing and how much they relied on me. But it never happened. Things began to change around my birthday. It had been a hard few months. Liam had broken his car again, and instead of helping him restore it, my father offered him mine. "Only temporarily," he said. "You don't drive very often, right?" It was a lie. I commuted to work every day, but Liam had a job interview that he could not miss, so I gave in. One day grew into 3, a week, and then 2. When I eventually asked for it back, Liam reacted angrily, accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful. My father truly sided with him. "You're going to deny your brother an opportunity to change his life." I ended up hiring a car simply to get to work. And then there was the electricity bill. I'd been paying it for over a year, silently and without complaint, after my father lost a large sum of money in some cryptocurrency scheme and asked if I could take care of a few things for him. Even once circumstances settled, no one volunteered to take it back. I mentioned it once, and my mother simply blinked at me and said, "Oh, I thought you liked having control over that stuff." I guess I did. I enjoyed knowing that the lights will remain on. My birthday fell on a Thursday. I wasn't anticipating anything major. I seldom do, but they offered to host a modest supper. It's just the family. I assumed everything was okay. Maybe some steak, maybe a cake, or simply a night off from asking for anything. When I went home I found the house spotless. That was new. Liam was wearing a real collared shirt, which seemed more like a red sign than anything else. There were beverages, music, and some decorations. My mother prepared my favorite dish, lasagna, and Liam handed me a cheap-looking gift bag with a half-hearted happy birthday guy. Inside was a mug that said, "World's okay, brother." I mustered a smile and chuckled. This is what I do. Then came the toast. My father rose up, whirling a glass of whiskey and tapping it with a spoon, as if he were at a wedding. He addressed Ethan in a suave, dramatic tone. The man of the hour, our rock, our trusty one, always available when we needed him. Everyone clinked their glasses. I smiled sweetly. "But, let's be honest," he added, chuckling. You are not actually family, Ethan. You are merely our safety net. He chuckled as if he had just told the greatest joke of his life. Mom giggled. Liam almost spit out his drink. Even my aunt, who I hadn't realized was there until then, let out a strange snort chuckle. I sat there paralyzed, still smiling, for what else could I do? My father wiped a tear from his eye. Come on, it is true. You're like an emergency fund. We never need to replenish. The background person, the unsung hero, like the guy in the movie who keeps the lights on while the stars receive all the attention. Jason added, "You should put that on your resume." I excused myself and went to the toilet, shut and closed the door, and gazed at myself in the mirror for quite some time. My hands were shaking. I was not furious. Not precisely. Not yet. It was as if a switch had switched. Something inside me had become motionless. Quiet, like a radio cutting off mid-song. That night, I waited until everyone fell asleep. I packed everything I needed. I canceled everything I was paying for, including electricity, gas, Wi-Fi, streaming accounts, and lawn service. I did not bang doors. I did not leave a note. I just walked out, leaving them to wake up in a house they could no longer afford. But I'm getting ahead of myself because before all of that, there were more signals, more breaches in the mask, more times when they stopped lying and I saw the reality. And the fact was that I had never been a part of their image, not the way I expected. And the next significant indication arrived the next morning, when the call began. I didn't respond to Jason, Mom, or Dad, not yet. When I didn't return their calls the next morning, I anticipated some backlash. I expected Jason to whine. I anticipated Mom to send passive-aggressive texts. I even anticipated Dad to attempt guilt-tripping me with a spiel about family responsibility. But what I didn't anticipate, and couldn't have foreseen, was how quickly their masks would fall off once they knew I wasn't coming back. It began with the texts. Initially the shorts were clipped. "Where are you now? Call your mom. You cannot just leave like that." I disregarded them all. I needed some room. I had booked into a low-cost hotel for a few days simply to breathe. The walls were thin, the air conditioner shook, and the water smelt somewhat metallic, yet it was silent. Nobody required me to mend a broken cabinet or pay a payment. Nobody interrupted me with a small request that escalated into a whole day of physical labor. It felt very peaceful, but it didn't stay long. The tone had altered by day 2. Mom texted a photograph of the home in the dark. "The electricity is out. I assumed you were paying for that." There was no greeting or care, only a strong edge of entitlement, as if I had broken an unsaid law by setting any form of limit. By day 3, Jason had left a 2-minute voicemail. I didn't listen to it all, but I did get the bit when he said, "You think you're punishing us? You're just screwing yourself, dude. You'll come crawling back." Spoiler. I didn't. Instead, I secured a modest studio apartment with a work buddy. It wasn't much, simply a 1-bedroom with creaking flooring and an alley-facing window, but it belonged to me. For the first time in years, I felt free to live my life as I saw fit. But that's when everything began to disintegrate at home. Apparently no one in my family had thought to move any of the accounts I was managing. The electricity is still in my name. The same applies to Wi-Fi, water, garbage pickup, and even streaming subscriptions. I hadn't simply been helping out. I had been the single person keeping the house running. When I yanked the plug, they were literally left scrambling. Mom phoned again. This time her voice was trembling and dramatic. "Ethan, honey, we're not mad. We simply need you to be sensible. Your father's blood pressure has been elevated. Liam struggles with interviews. Can't you simply give us a little help till things settle down?" I didn't respond. They did not want me. They want the services I offered, the stability I delivered, and the comfort blanket they had wrapped themselves in for years. And now that everything was gone, they were in disarray. However, the true breaking point occurred a week later. I had been fully ignoring them by then. No texting, calling, or emailing. I'd even banned Liam after he sent me a series of messages calling me a selfish little worm and emotionally manipulative. I suppose saying no for the first time in a decade seemed like manipulation to him. Then out of nowhere, I received a text from my aunt, who had been laughing at my birthday dinner. "Hey Ethan. Your mother indicated that you left due to something your father said. I hope you're okay." I am sure he did not intend it. That message sparked something in me because I knew they still didn't grasp it. They assumed this was about one joke, one poor night, and one slightly incorrect statement. They had no clue how deep the rot was. I did not react to her either. Next came the betrayal. It was Thursday afternoon. I was halfway through a report from my new residence when my phone alerted me to a bank notice. Withdrawal, $1,400. My stomach sank. Another one. Withdrawal, $700. I instantly entered into my account and noticed the damage. Over $2,500 was gone in less than 6 minutes, and all of the transactions were made to a shared emergency account that I had forgotten existed. One of my dads suggested that we keep it open in case something happened. I have added them as beneficiaries. They were not supposed to touch it until I told them to. I phoned the bank. They stated that the transactions were conducted in person and approved by the account holder. When I explained that I hadn't touched that account in months, the representative seemed compassionate but stern. Technically, your father's name appears on the account. I apologize, Mr. Dawson. That was when I lost it. I did not yell. I did not weep. But something chilly and quiet came over me. The type of serenity that comes after you've overcome shock, betrayal, and hurt. There was no way to repair this. There was no discussion about it. This was not a misunderstanding. This was stealing. And the saddest thing was that I knew they didn't even realize it was wrong. I texted Liam, "Your dad emptied my emergency fund." He responded immediately, "Relax, it was a family emergency. Mom needed her meds and the car battery died. We'll pay you back." There was no apology, warning, or acknowledgement that what they did was unlawful. Just the same nonchalant idea that I would always be available to catch them. I did not react. An hour later, I received a voicemail from my father. "Ethan, I'm not sure what you're so unhappy about. That money was intended for the family. You are a member of this family, right? Or are you seriously going to turn your back on your own blood for a few $1,000s? That sentence stayed with me. You are a member of this family, right? Funny, considering I was very sure he stated the exact opposite only a week before, as everyone was toasting my lasagna. I did not sleep that night. I remained awake, pacing my small flat and looking at the wall as if it contained answers. My heart raced, but my thoughts were sluggish and meticulous. I went over every discussion from the previous year. Every favor I had done, every time I drove Mom to an appointment, every time I'd bailed out Liam, every birthday they forgot. Every time I was urged to be patient or stop making a fuss. It wasn't only about the money. It was about the pattern. They kept taking. And I continued giving because I believed that was what love looked like. I thought family meant making sacrifices. But to them, it only meant free labor and an ATM. The next morning, I contacted the bank again, terminated the joint account, froze my credit, and created new passwords and PINs. I investigated every internet subscription, every app, and every remaining danger of access they could have. And then I did something I never imagined I would do. I returned to the house, not to chat or reconcile, but simply to view it. It was worse than I had expected. The yard had not been mowed, the trash cans were overflowing. There was an orange notice on the front door concerning outstanding utility bills. There was a cracked window near the porch. The home appeared worn, drooping from neglect. I did not knock. I just stood there, staring at the house where I'd spent the most of my life, wondering how it had fallen apart so rapidly without me. Or perhaps it was always like this, and I simply kept it together long enough to make it appear normal. And then I noticed them through the glass. Liam laid on the sofa, shirtless, playing video games. Dad is sitting in his recliner, ranting at the television. Mom is in the kitchen, pacing with her phone. None of them noticed me. That's when the last puzzle piece fit into place. I had never been part of their image. I was the frame. And the image was coming apart without me. I turned and went away. And then my phone rang. Unknown number. I responded without thinking. "Hello, Ethan," a woman's voice spoke. "This is Megan. I work with your father. I realize this is strange, but I believe we need to discuss." My breath caught. "Megan, why would one of Dad's co-workers be contacting me?" she continued, her voice low and anxious. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I overheard something in the office. Your father has been saying stuff about your money. Regarding how he exploited your information too." I paused in the center of the sidewalk. "Use my information?" No. No, he would not. But the uneasiness had already settled in my belly. Cold and heavy. "What did he do?" I asked, unable to get the words out. Megan hesitated for a while before saying something that caused the ground beneath my feet to move. Megan's voice was trembling as she uttered it. "I believe your father created a credit line in your name." I didn't answer immediately. Couldn't. My mouth became dry. As her words resonated in my brain, the line became silent with a steady ringing. I opened a credit line in my name. He has been boasting at work. She continued, just above a whisper. Something about getting ahead of a tight financial flow. He said he utilized your credit score since his own was in disarray. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. You are sure? I did not want to get involved, Ethan. But I felt you should know. She hung up. I remained stuck on the sidewalk for a long time. I held my phone in my hand. Scream diminishing. The final call is still burning faintly. People went by me. Cars drove past. The world continued to move, but everything inside me came to a standstill. I believed I'd already reached my limit. I believed the stolen emergency fund, the years of emotional manipulation, and the birthday humiliation were the betrayal. But this was different. This was computed. It wasn't a slip, an argument, or a heated exchange. It was fraud, a complete breach of trust, and for a brief moment, I wondered whether I had dreamed everything positive about my family. I took the remainder of the day off, phoned in sick, closed the blinds in my apartment, and perched on the side of my bed, scrolling through every credit monitoring app I could find. I signed up for each of them. The notifications came in one by one. A new credit card was established 3 months ago. There is a $4,300 balance. A $2,000 personal loan sought an address change that was related to my identity but not their residence. My stomach churned. They had not merely grabbed my money. They were creating a second life using my identity. And if Megan hadn't told me, I could have discovered out when my credit score dropped, or when a collections collector came on my door. That night, I did not sleep again. But this time, I wasn't pacing in terror. I was planning. I submitted a fraud complaint, froze my credit, and spoke with a credit bureau person who was kind, informative, and very helpful. My account was flagged for questionable conduct. I filed a police complaint, phoned my bank again, and explained the entire issue. I was afraid they wouldn't believe me, that they'd think I was simply an entitled youngster attempting to blame his family for his own obligations. They took it seriously, which surprised me. A fraud investigator has been assigned to the case. That was the beginning of the repercussions. The beginning of autumn. For weeks I was buried in papers. I had to validate each account, confirm my residence and submit ID copies, affidavits and notarized declarations. It was exhausting and costly. But I did it quietly and meticulously. I told no one in my family what I knew. Let them twist in the darkness. Even as I fought back, I felt like I was sliding. The stress was tremendous. I began missing work deadlines. My boss called me in for a performance review. I couldn't concentrate on anything for longer than 12 minutes. My hunger disappeared. Some nights I sat in the shower until the water ran cold, hoping to feel something other than rage, remorse, or the crushing numbness that had crept into the corners of my mind. I wasn't fine. And for the first time, I allowed myself to confess it. One night, around 2 or 3 a.m., I found myself looking at an old photo of my family saved on a hard drive that I hadn't seen in months. It was my high school graduation. I was standing in the center, grinning, arms around both of my parents. Liam had also wrapped an arm over my shoulders. Everyone appeared proud, pleased, and unified. That was a lie. I sat down on the floor for a long time, staring at it. I eventually moved the picture to the trash bin and erased it. Not in fury, but in acceptance. That was the bottom for me. But here's the issue about rock bottom. When you reach that frigid hollow region when there is nothing left to lose, you get clarity. And clarity brings power. The first thing I did was regain control of my time. I wanted remote employment for several weeks. My manager was apprehensive, but he said yes. That allowed me the opportunity to focus on both recuperation and reconstruction. I started waking up at 6 a.m. Not because I had to, but because I required structure. I prepared coffee, went on walks, and joined a gym, despite the fact that I had never been a fitness fan. I did not go to get buff. I attended because no one could bother me for an hour each day. I could sweat, breathe, and exist. I began recording my expenditures, created a new bank account, transferred to a credit union, and received a new phone number. I erased every shared family calendar and account that I was still connected to. Even my Spotify was still on a shared plan. Liam had added all of his playlists under my login. Gone. I was reconstructing brick by brick. Small victories also occurred. The fraud investigation continued forward. After 3 months, the credit card was revoked, and my credit score began to improve. The loan request was refused. Thankfully, the bank had identified it before disbursing monies. I received a letter verifying that my father had been informed about the inquiry. I'm not sure what he told them. I didn't care. The damage was being corrected. I've also begun treatment. It was not something I ever expected to do. My family trained me to believe that therapy was for those who couldn't deal with their own problems. But one day, as I went past a clinic near my apartment, I noticed a sign that said, "You deserve peace." And something inside me shattered. My therapist, Julia, did not tell me anything groundbreaking. She was just listening. Really listened. And then she assisted me in saying things aloud that I had previously only pondered in the dark. Like how I always felt like a ghost in my own home. Like how being dependable became a prison I didn't design yet couldn't escape. I wasn't upset because they had used me. I was outraged because I had allowed them to do so. That one struck hard. But she was correct. And week by week, the fog began to dissipate. I laughed again. Made small chat with coworkers. Started cooking, not simply freezing meals. I learned I enjoy stir-fry. Purchased authentic ingredients. Went to a farmer's market. I became acquainted with a woman who sold handmade soap. I know it seems insignificant, but it was important. It demonstrated that I could have a life outside of damage control. My world remained tiny, but it was mine. And then, one afternoon, I received a message from an old college acquaintance named Eli. We hadn't spoken for years. We used to collaborate on university technology initiatives, and he always had crazy ideas that somehow worked out. He was now working on a logistics business and wanted to know if I was interested in helping out with analytics. At first, I hesitated. I was still weak and recuperating, but I said yes, although part-time. That part-time position evolved into contract labor. That contract job led to a full-time offer. It paid more than my previous employment, included equity, and provided total remote freedom. I took it. It seemed as if the cosmos was finally breathing alongside me rather than against me. I sat on my balcony one night, nearly 4 months after leaving my family's house. It wasn't extravagant, simply a little concrete slab facing an alley. But I had a cheap lawn chair, a cool drink, and a string of dollar shop fairy lights that I had set up just because I liked the way they looked. The city hummed below, softly and distantly. I gazed around my flat. The laundry was finished. The dishes were clean. There was food in the refrigerator, a plant on the windowsill, and serenity in my heart. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Liam. He was served today. You really went that far? I looked at it for a long time. No background, just instant outrage. I understood precisely what he was talking about. The fraud case. It had progressed to the next step. And if they believed it was the end, they had no clue what was following. Liam's text caused the initial wave. He was served today. You really went that far? There's no question mark at the end. There was no hint of genuine interest, only the accusing, passive-aggressive tone he had honed over the years. The sort that made everything seem like my fault. As if I had decided to create an issue rather than simply accepting one more insult, theft, or betrayal. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, since by the time that communication arrived, I was no longer merely healing. I was ready. After suffering betrayal, you have an unusual sense of focus. Once the fog clears, the shaking stops, and the world no longer feels like it's spinning off its axis, you're left with this calm intensity, a clarity that burns hot yet is cold, sharp, and exact. It's no longer about fury. It's all about balance. And the balance, in my situation, was long overdue. So I began planning, not with fire, but with ice. The first thing I did was research. I didn't only seek justice. I desired judicial justice, something straightforward and undeniable, since if I had learnt anything, it was that my family only recognized repercussions when they appeared in the form of papers, invoices, or legal threats. I reviewed the fraud case files. The bank validated the reversal charges, but I still had open police files for the credit line and address change. I started putting together a case file, printing everything, arranging it in a binder, labeling evidence with tabs, bank statements, account openings, Megan's tip-off, text threads, and my father's voicemail. I even printed a transcript for that one. Are you part of this family? Or are you seriously going to turn your back on your own? Blood for a few $1,000s? I produced copies and saved backups on an encrypted device. If they attempted to refute any of it, I'd have receipts in stereo. Then began the study of financial recovery. My therapist, Julia, advised that I speak with a lawyer called Malcolm, who is soft-spoken. He specialized in family financial deception. At first I was skeptical. I imagined that attorneys were just for those with large finances and plenty of free time. But Malcolm was different. He listened and asked crisp, insightful questions. Then he said something that I will never forget. You aren't being vengeful. You're setting limits with your teeth. This is what repercussions are. He assisted me in drafting a formal letter of intent, which said that if the damages were not recovered within 35 days, I would pursue charges. There was no demand or tantrum, it was just business. I didn't email it straight away since there was more to accomplish. Next, I cleaned the home. Emotionally, I sought out to old pals, not to rant but to reconnect. People I ghosted or pushed aside throughout the years because I was always too preoccupied with my family's troubles. I sent basic messages. Hey, I realize it has been a while. I would love to catch up sometime. Some never responded. Others did. I met Sarah, an old college lab colleague, for coffee. She said she had always thought my family sounded a little intense. I laughed. She was not mistaken. We spoke for hours. It is not about retribution or suffering, but about life and the future. It was the first time I felt like Ethan again, rather than the damage control professional I had become. Then there was Eli, the company founder who had offered me my new position. After a few months of part-time employment, he offered me a more strategic post as head of analytics, with full benefits and an equity plan. I accepted. Suddenly, I had leverage. A real career, a real salary, and a future that did not involve becoming someone else's safety net. That altered everything. With my finances stabilized and the fraud case underway, I moved on to the next phase in the plan. Information control. My family has always lived in a world of appearances. Maintaining the appearance was more crucial than repairing anything underlying. If something appeared broken, it was disregarded. If anything sounded disagreeable, it was rejected. That was their playbook. So I switched the script. I started capturing everything, not just for the legal case but also for personal use. A digital notebook, timelines, copies of every email, voicemail, missed call, and conversation notes. I kept everything structured like a war file. Then I went one step farther. I established a secret and encrypted Google Drive folder. I labeled it Family Receipts. Inside I uploaded everything. The communication from Liam in which he admits to utilizing my emergency fund. The call logs reveal when my father accessed the joint account. The credit bureau sent a notice on the fraudulent address change. Even screenshots of my mother's Facebook postings claiming that everything was okay at home. I didn't intend to reveal it, but I could, and the potential was enough. Then came the most surgical aspect of the arrangement. I phoned Megan. She had been silent since our last conversation, but when I clarified that I was not expecting her to participate, but only to check dates and information, she agreed to cooperate. She verified what she'd heard. My father brags at the office about straightening up Ethan's finances to make way for more family chances. He referred to it as a collective investment, although there was no group. It was only stealing that sealed it. In the end, I opted to call Liam rather than my parents. I knew he was the weakest link. I built a message using the mouth and the reactor. Polite, cool, and professional. Liam, I have sent legal paperwork on the bogus accounts established in my name. If you or Dad want to address this quietly, I recommend starting payments by the 35-day period indicated in the accompanying notification. Any efforts to contact me directly will be noted and reported to the case handler. Further identity abuse will result in an urgent escalation. He responded within minutes. Are you really doing this? You're going to sue Dad for what? A few thousand. I did not react. 10 minutes later. You do not comprehend what you are doing. Do you believe the court will side with you over your own father? I did not react. Another hour has passed. Fine. Do you desire war? Let's go. War. No, Liam. I want freedom. But if war was the only language he knew, I could speak it fluently. The next morning, I went to the courts. I filed the small claims lawsuit myself. Official, marked, authentic. I sent an official notification to their address. Certified mail, tracking number, and signature required. I imagined my father's expression when he signed for it. The way his brows would come together. My mother would try to console me with, "We can fix this, Mark." As Liam paced in the background, shouting curses and blaming everyone but himself. Let them panic. Allow them to scurry because, for once, I had the upper hand, and while they were figuring out how to deal with the consequences, I was already starting on the last act. They believe that retribution is best served cold. But I didn't want the cold. I want quiet. I wanted it to feel like a light switch was turned. 1 second on, then off. There was no yelling or tantrums, simply quiet where there had previously been commotion. Where entitlement previously was, there is now emptiness. Most importantly, I wanted them to feel my absence, not only in unpaid bills or disconnected services, but in the fundamental fabric of their existence, since I was no longer their safety net. I was their reckoning. The court date arrived on a sweltering Tuesday morning. I dressed professionally in a blue button-down shirt, no tie, clean slacks, and combed hair. I brought my binders. Yes, that binder, with each receipt, report, and transcript properly categorized. Malcolm, the lawyer I had hired, greeted me at the door with a nod and a manila packet in hand. We did not chat much. We did not need to. Inside, the courtroom was modest, resembling a conference room rather than a courtroom. Only a judge, a clerk, and a few chairs for the parties concerned. My father arrived 5 minutes late, looking as if someone had dragged him through 3 meetings and a horrible night's sleep. Liam followed, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt and sunglasses on his head as if it were cool. My mother wasn't present. I was told she had a migraine and couldn't handle seeing the family like way. Of course, the hearing was straightforward. The judge read the complaint. My father attempted to interject twice, but Malcolm gently motioned for silence. Then it was my time. I opened the binder and gave them copies of credit applications, address change notifications, voicemails, screenshots of text conversations, and Megan's signed declaration verifying what she had heard in the office. Each piece sat perfectly on the judge's desk, like bricks in a wall. My father's expression altered with every page, from mild displeasure to perplexity and anxiety. Liam sank in his seat, arms folded and grumbling beneath his breath. The judge inquired whether they had an answer. My father said it was all a misunderstanding. Malcolm inquired, "Did you or did you not open a credit card using Ethan Dawson's name, social security number, and address?" There was silence. Then I did what I needed to do for my family. The room became silent. Even the cashier paused typing. The judge scrawled something on her paper before looking up and saying, "That's not a legal justification, Mr. Dawson." It was finished 30 minutes later. Judgment in my favor. Full return of the stolen monies, plus damages. The sum was not tremendous, but that wasn't the objective. It was official, public, and genuine, a legal blemish on my father's record, and it provided me justification to accelerate the fraud case with the credit agencies, which I did the next day. But I wasn't finished yet. Not even close. 3 days later, I politely emailed Megan to thank her for her assistance. She responded with a quick letter. "You might want to check into this." My father's company's HR department sent me an email with an attachment. It was brief, formal, and frigid. "We are initiating an internal investigation into the unlawful use of personal financial information by an employee. John Dawson has been placed on administrative leave while the case is being handled." I looked at it for a long time. I then forwarded it to my personal email address and preserved it. I did not celebrate. There was no music or champagne, only a long, deep breath. The dominoes were falling. Then came the backlash at home. Liam was the first to crack. He sent me a series of frenzied texts that ranged from angry to desperate. "You've wrecked us. Do you understand how this looks? Mom isn't talking to anyone. Can we just chat, man? Please." I disregarded them all. However, I preserved the screenshots because I wasn't playing defense anymore. A week later, I received a message from a number I did not know. This was a voicemail. My mother sounded exhausted and worn. "Ethan, I'm not sure what occurred. This was not meant to go this far. We are your family." I removed it. And then a notion came to me. They had never apologized. Not once. Not for money. Not for credit fraud. Not for the birthday humiliation or the years of using me like a tool. Not even now. They did not wish to set things right. They wanted me to reset, to go back to being their band-aid, fixer, and backup plan. That version of myself was no longer present. My ultimate act of vengeance was not overtly dramatic. It was surgical. I issued a stop and desist letter through Malcolm. An official notification that any additional contact from my relatives, whether direct or indirect, will be logged as harassment and reported to law authorities. Then I changed my phone number, moved my mailing address to a P.O. box, set up a new emergency contact at work, switched banks, and even opened a new Spotify account. Perhaps it was petty, but it seemed symbolic. I wiped the slate clean. I did not glance back. 6 months later, my startup boss, Eli, called me. The firm had recently raised Series B investment, and they were moving me to VP of Analytics. The offer included a raise, stock options, and the opportunity to head a team. I accepted. That night, I was sitting on the balcony of my new apartment. Yes, I had moved again and poured myself a drink. A genuine one. Not your typical gas station beer, but something creamy and flavorful. I watched the sun sink behind the skyline, sending gold across everything. I didn't think about my father, Liam, or our house. I thought of serenity, stillness, and how lovely it sounded. My father lost his job according to the most recent information I received. He attempted to portray it as early retirement, but information spread. Megan informed me that he had been discreetly banned. No firm wanted to work with someone who had a financial fraud verdict on their record. Liam alternated between warehouse work and retail positions. Still stayed at home and blamed everyone but himself. My mother continued to hold church potlucks as if nothing had happened. But there was one difference. I was no longer part of the image. I was not the safety net. I wasn't the backup. I was not theirs. They lost me. And I did not raise my voice. Did not throw any punches. We didn't shatter any windows. I just quietly reclaimed every piece of myself they had stolen. And when the dust settled, they had nothing left to stand on. They smiled at my birthday and clinked their glasses, believing I'd never go. However, they forgot that safety nets do not break when you fall. They break when you do.